let's talk about the Final Four, because like at the end of the day, that's what everybody wants to get to, right? And so you and I actually had ultimately the same Final Four, and I think I was really driven by storylines here, honestly, for how I picked the Final Four, right? Like it's not a confident pick for me that UConn gets there over Southern California. You know, like we're going against Juju Watkins, right? I leaned on the experience factor here. I leaned on the fact that like AZ Fudd will be playing in this game, and she did not play in the game during the season that USC won. Yes. So between experience, not just of the players, but of like the coaches, Paige Bueckers, always when she plays, if she's healthy and she plays, they at least make it to the Final Four, right? Like, so it's history, it's experience. Those are sort of like what drove me, you know, to UCLA getting there. But I gotta tell you, saying like they're gonna get there over Southern California was difficult for me. And then I also think like Notre Dame, like, right? Like us, many people having Notre Dame in their Final Four, like one, we're saying that they're gonna beat Texas the second time. And you just said, if you have Texas getting there, I have them playing Texas, right, in the Elite Eight to get there.
Yeah, I have them playing Texas in the Elite Eight as well, but beating them.
Me too, but they beat them earlier in the season. So based on what you just said earlier about like it's hard to beat a team twice.
Yeah.
You know, but Neil Ivey, right? Like she has to be tired of like just getting to the Sweet 16. And then I still think, even with the way they ended the season, I still think them getting the 3 seed was a little disrespectful, Callie. I think that they fell a little too low. And so, and I think we're going to go back to seeing the Notre Dame that we saw earlier in the season. I think Neil Ivey is going to get them right, you know? And they have such a dynamic duo in Hannah Hidalgo and Olivia Miles. So I don't know. I think Notre Dame gets there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you, and I think my logic is the same in picking Notre Dame and even just confidence in Neil Ivey. I think too, something now that I'm like looking at the bracket, I see why my logic about UCLA and Southern Cal, they're not like they're not going to see each other in my bracket. Like they're not playing each other in the way that I have it panning out here because of the confidence that I have in Paige Bueckers and UConn. And obviously that was a point of contention for Southern Cal. Like when they saw the bracket, and having to go through UConn again is frustrating, I'm sure. But I think that the reason why I gave the edge to Paige Bueckers and UConn is because this is Paige's senior year, and like this is it. You know, like I think that when we talk about her legacy as a college basketball player, like this year is going to be crucial. And I know that she knows that. I know that Gino knows that. Like UConn is aware of it. You mentioned like AZ as well. Like to me, that's a key storyline. And obviously Southern Cal having to see UConn again after how last year went for them in the tournament, like there's part of my logic that could say like, well, maybe Southern Cal will have learned and like will have had like, you know, pent up resentment or whatever, but like I don't know if that's necessarily going to be enough. And then also their coach Lindsay, the way that she responded by saying, I never thought I'd be disrespected by being a #1 seed, that's almost like an edge, like a negative edge to me. To me it's like I don't know if that was the response that you want to being a #1 seed, but I understand the frustration of having to go through UConn. But it made me think like, I don't know where my confidence level, but obviously I want to see Juju, you know, surprise people and whatever. But this was a really hard pick for me, as you can tell, as I'm like talking through it. Like that was a difficult pick, but this is going to be really good basketball.
Yeah, well, I mean, we want to at least see UConn and Southern California in the Elite Eight, ideally. And so hopefully we get that rematch again. But if you thought Lindsay's reaction to being picked as the 4th #1 was negative, what did you think of Dawn's? Dawn felt disrespected. And listen, I don't think you want to have a South Carolina team feeling disrespected heading into the tourney. The only thing I feel confident about, and I'm not trying to jinx anybody, but I feel very confident about my South Carolina pick. which is crazy because it would, potentially be a rematch, not like of last season, but like if we get ultimately UConn and South Carolina. And I just think the way that UConn beat down South Carolina in the regular season, I just can't imagine them not avenging that. So I think South Carolina gets their lick back and ultimately wins. But I mean, we haven't even really talked about UCLA. All I'll say about them is I do have them making the Final Four. I've seen a lot of brackets, and I feel like they're being disrespected a little bit as a 1 seed. Like a lot of people have them getting upset. I will say I do think their region is really challenging, and I think that with South Carolina, Dawn was upset, but I actually think that they ended up with the best region. I really do.
Oh yeah.
And Lauren Betts, because like she just does not get enough praise, right? Also a National Player of the Year candidate, right? There's no teams in that Region 1 that can like really handle Lauren Betts. For me, what the disadvantage is for UCLA is the backcourts, right? Like you have NC State in that bracket. Like their guard play, like Corey Close is going to have like a real challenge for her. Like she needs to make sure they prepared for all. If LSU is healthy, like you think that they might be, right? Like those could all just be really challenging for UCLA. But I think Lauren Betts steps up to the challenge, and I think she does at a minimum get them back to the Final Four. So that's why I ended up there. But I'm going, South Carolina to win it all. And we get the South Carolina UConn matchup that I think most people want. And, because it was all about UConn, and now it's like all about South Carolina. And so seeing these two powerhouses match up with these two coaches and Gino and Dawn, I think would be the best championship we could potentially get.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's a matchup that's putting butts in seats. Like everybody's tuning in to see UConn and South Carolina. And I think even like just thinking about like the legacies of both of these coaches, Gino and Dawn are like storied college basketball coaches with incredible rosters. And I know you mentioned Dawn mentioning disrespect. That to me is not as surprising because I feel like that's something like Dawn Staley is having to call it disrespect a lot with her team. And I think that like that's almost like the norm. Like that's like the baseline for South Carolina. But like so I didn't really think twice about it. Like and I don't think that that's like not warranted. I do think that like South Carolina is a team that's often disrespected. Like if you look at I don't know like where they landed with like All Americans, but I didn't see what USC All Americans. I think that that's crazy, especially when people will try and make it seem like like South Carolina's only good because they've got all these McDonald's All Americans from high school and all this stuff. It's like, okay, well, it's just weird. So I think that like that was like shoulders. But I don't know. With Southern Cal, I was like, I don't know. Like so, but again, that's just we're just gonna like see how it pans out. I even think like a team like Ohio State, like I have them in the Sweet 16, and like I don't think that you do. I think for me it was like a vote of confidence for Cody McMahon. This is like she's at her best this season. It's junior year, averaging career high 16.6 points per game, which isn't like leading the nation or anything, but like she's playing at her best. And I think too like Ohio State has had some significant like conference losses to where maybe like there's been enough for them to say like, I mean, I think even like if you just look at like the loss that they took to UCLA and even like Southern California, like they played really poorly in those first quarters and gave up like a lot of early points. So to me, it's like it's easy. Like that's an easy fix. Like to me, stuff like that like stands out. It's like you're looking at a team that seems to have been focused on improvement. Like Cody has talked about, like, I wanted to improve this level of my game, and she did. So now it's like you look at their previous like major losses. Yeah, it's an easy fix. Just lock in defensively early. Like it's an easy thing to improve,
right?
And like that could be the difference for them in the tournament. So like to me, it's like,
but I don't think it will be.
But like that's what I was trying to. I'm like, what are like the small things that like seem like would be maybe a deal breaker, but could be an easy fix in like the film room. You know what I mean? Like those are the things that I think might make a difference for teams in this tournament. Like how can you improve? What can you fix?
Of course. Well, if you're scouting and you're doing your scout properly, it should be. But I had Duke beating Ohio State, and they impressed me in the tournament. And I think Carol Lawson. I just I Ohio State's great. Shout out to them, but sorry, I went with Duke, and it ultimately doesn't matter because I have South Carolina. So ultimately, we gave our Final Four picks. We put it on wax, and we gave our prediction. You and I both are in Dawn Staley We Trust. So
Yeah.
it is what it is. Who knows what will happen, but that's why it's the most exciting time of the year, and I am looking forward to it.
Me too. I'm like, oh my gosh, I need my bracket. Like I'm like stressed about my bracket now. Now that we've gone through it and compared,
Don't be
I'm like,
stressed.
I don't know. My level of confidence in my bracket has maybe lessened
Callie, that's
after.
it. It's done. The exercise is done. You submitted the bracket. It is over. March Madness, let's go.
Let's get it.